She adjusted the hem of her dress nervously, eyes darting around the glittering wedding hall. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, their crystal teardrops catching light from 100 angles. Laughter rang out from clusters of guests, and couples clinked champagne glasses under golden lights that seemed to warm everyone but her. Yet Emily sat alone, isolated at the very back. A single chair tucked away against the wall, as though she were an afterthought. The seat card with her name had been deliberately pushed there, away from family tables, away from friends, away from anyone who might notice her existence. Her sister Rebecca, radiant in her white gown with its cathedral train, stole glances across the room, but never once came over. The whispers around the hall grew louder with each passing moment. Emily could feel them like pinpricks against her skin. Snide remarks about why she didn't have a date, why she wasn't married yet at 28, why she was always the extra one. Each cruel comment sank deeper than the one before, settling in that familiar hollow place in her chest where all the old wounds lived. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Her face burned despite the air conditioning that kept the hall at a perfect 72 degrees. For a moment, she genuinely considered slipping away quietly, just vanishing into the night like she'd never been there at all. Her mother wouldn't notice. Her father would probably be relieved. Rebecca certainly wouldn't miss her. But then, a warm voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Mind if I sit here?" "Act like you're with me." She looked up. A man stood before her, tall with steady gray eyes and a gentle demeanor that seemed out of place in this cathedral of judgment. He wore a navy suit that fit him well, and beside him stood a little girl with honey-colored curls bouncing as she whispered urgently, "Daddy, let's help her." She looked so sad. In that instant, Emily's world shifted. The stranger's presence wasn't just a seat filled. It was a shield, a lifeline, an unexpected rescue. And what started as a simple act of kindness at a wedding would soon change everything she thought she knew about love, belonging, and family. The man extended his hand. "I'm Daniel. This is my daughter, Sophie." "We noticed you were sitting alone." Emily blinked, unsure if this was real or some fever dream born of humiliation. "I'm Emily," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to. We know," Sophie said matter-of-factly, climbing into the chair beside Emily without waiting for permission. The girl was perhaps 6 years old, wearing a pink dress with a white ribbon, her small hands already reaching for Emily's. "Daddy says sometimes people need rescuing. Are you the bride's sister? You look like her, but prettier." Daniel cleared his throat, a hint of apology in his expression as he took the seat on Emily's other side. "Sophie has a talent for saying exactly what she thinks." "It's okay," Emily said. And for the first time that evening, she felt the ghost of a smile touch her lips. "Thank you. Both of you." The truth was, Emily hadn't always been the forgotten one. There had been a time, years ago, when she'd believed she had a place in her family. She'd been the creative child, the dreamer who filled notebooks with stories and painted watercolors of imaginary worlds. Her mother had called it impractical. Her father had called it a phase. And Rebecca, perfect Rebecca with her business degree and her prestigious job and her acceptable fiancé, had simply rolled her eyes and told Emily to grow up. The comparison started when Emily was 14. Rebecca had won a scholarship. Emily had won a poetry contest. One was celebrated with a family dinner at the country club. The other was acknowledged with a distracted "that's nice" over breakfast. By the time Emily turned 18, she'd learned to make herself smaller, quieter, less demanding of attention she would never receive. She'd chosen to study art education at a state university instead of following Rebecca to an Ivy League school. Her mother had wept as though Emily had announced a terminal illness. Her father had simply stopped asking about her future. And Rebecca had gotten engaged to Marcus, a lawyer from the right family with the right connections, cementing her position as the daughter who'd done everything correctly. Emily remembered the Thanksgiving when she'd brought home her first serious boyfriend. Jason had been kind, a fellow teacher who loved literature and believed in her creativity. Her mother had seated him at the far end of the table. Her father had asked him exactly 3 questions throughout the entire meal. Rebecca had spent the evening detailing the Caribbean resort, where she and Marcus planned to honeymoon. Jason had stopped calling 2 weeks later, and Emily couldn't bring herself to blame him. The wedding invitation had arrived 4 months ago. Rebecca had included a note in her precise handwriting. "I hope you'll come. It would mean a lot to have my sister there." But there'd been no request for Emily to be a bridesmaid. No involvement in the planning. Just an invitation, arriving late. As though Emily were a distant cousin, rather than the only sibling Rebecca had. Now, sitting in this ballroom that probably cost more than Emily's annual salary, she felt the weight of every single moment that had led to this isolation. The seat assignment hadn't been an accident. Rebecca had orchestrated this as surely as she'd orchestrated the ice sculptures and the 12-piece orchestra. This was Emily's place in the family hierarchy, made visible for everyone to see. "Your sister's dress is beautiful," Daniel said quietly, pulling Emily back from the edge of old pain. "But weddings can be lonely places when you're not part of the celebration." Emily turned to look at him properly for the first time. His gray eyes held understanding, not pity. There was a story there, she sensed. Something that had taught him about loneliness in crowds. "I'm technically part of it," she said, trying for lightness. "Just not a very important part." Sophie, who had been studying the centerpiece with intense focus, suddenly grabbed Emily's hand. "You're important to us. Right, Daddy?" "Absolutely right, sweetheart," Daniel agreed, and the simple certainty in his voice made Emily's throat tight. The orchestra began playing something classical and romantic. Around them, guests shifted in their seats as the first course was served. Emily noticed the glances, now curious looks from her mother's friends, raised eyebrows from Rebecca's college roommates. The woman who'd been invisible was suddenly visible, and it was all because of the man and child who'd chosen to sit beside her. "Do you know the bride and groom?" Emily asked, partly from curiosity, partly from a desperate need to understand why these strangers had wandered into her corner of exile. "We're friends of Marcus's family," Daniel explained. "His sister and my late wife were college roommates. Sophie and I were invited. But we don't really know many people here." "Late wife." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. "I'm sorry," Emily said softly. "Thank you." Daniel's expression remained calm, but Emily caught the flicker of old grief that never quite disappeared. "It's been 3 years. We're learning how to navigate the world as a team, aren't we, Sophie?" "Daddy and I are pirates," Sophie announced, apparently done with sadness. "We sail the 7 seas together. Except the seas are really just the neighborhood. And our ship is a blue Honda." Emily laughed, a real laugh that surprised her with its genuineness. "That sounds like the best kind of adventure. Do you want to be a pirate with us?" Sophie asked, with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. "We need more crew members. Daddy says diversity of skills is important." "Did he now?" Emily glanced at Daniel, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have been watching too many team-building videos for work," he admitted. "I'm an architect. I can't help but see everything in terms of structure and collaboration. And I'm a teacher," Emily said. "Elementary art. So I definitely understand the importance of creativity and problem-solving." Sophie's eyes widened. "You're a teacher? Do you know Miss Rodriguez?" "She teaches 2nd grade at Riverside Elementary." "I actually teach at Riverside," Emily said, delighted by the coincidence. "Though I work with all the grades, I might have seen Sophie around the hallways." "Small world," Daniel murmured. But there was warmth in his voice that suggested he didn't mind the world being small, not when it led to moments like this. The servers arrived with plates of seared salmon and asparagus arranged like works of art. Emily watched as her mother, 3 tables away, noticed the people now sitting with her forgotten daughter. Rebecca's head turned as well, and even from a distance, Emily could see the confusion on her sister's face. The seating chart hadn't included companions for Emily. "This wasn't part of the plan. They're looking at you," Sophie observed, following Emily's gaze. Do they not like you? Because if they don't, they're silly. You're nice, and you smell like vanilla. It's complicated, Emily said, which was the simplest truth she could offer. Adults always say that, Sophie sighed, as though she'd heard it 1,000 times before. But usually it just means someone's being mean, and nobody wants to admit it. From the mouths of children, Emily thought. She felt Daniel's hand brush against hers on the tablecloth. A brief touch that might have been accidental, but felt deliberate. You don't have to explain, he said quietly. I know what it's like to feel like you don't fit into your own family's story. Before Emily could respond, the best man stood to give his toast. The hall fell into respectful silence as he spoke of Marcus and Rebecca's perfect romance, their perfect plans, their perfect future. Emily felt the familiar tightness in her chest return, the one that whispered she would never be enough, never be worthy of this kind of celebration. But then Sophie's small hand found hers under the table, squeezing tight. And Daniel shifted slightly in his chair so his shoulder touched Emily's, a solid presence that said without words, "You're not alone anymore." For the first time in longer than she could remember, Emily allowed herself to believe it might be true. As the toast concluded, and applause rippled through the room, Rebecca rose from the head table. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting congratulations and air kisses, but her trajectory was clear. She was heading toward Emily's table, toward the anomaly that didn't fit her carefully constructed narrative. Emily's stomach clenched. She knew that look on her sister's face, the one that appeared whenever something threatened Rebecca's control over a situation. "Emily," Rebecca said when she reached them, her smile bright and hollow. "I see you've made friends." "Rebecca, this is Daniel and his daughter Sophie," Emily said, proud that her voice remained steady. "Daniel, Sophie, this is my sister, the bride." "Congratulations," Daniel said graciously, standing to shake Rebecca's hand. "It's a beautiful wedding. Thank you." Rebecca's eyes were already cataloging everything: Daniel's expensive suit, his confident bearing, the way he stood protectively near Emily. "I wasn't aware Emily was bringing a guest." Last-minute decision, Emily heard herself say, the lie coming surprisingly easily. "I hope it's not a problem." For a moment, Rebecca's mask slipped. Emily saw the flash of something surprise, maybe even concern before the perfect bride facade returned. "Of course not. Family is always welcome to bring guests. I just wish you'd told me. I would have made sure you had better seats." The implication hung in the air. Better seats for someone who mattered enough to have a companion. "These seats are perfect," Sophie piped up, apparently immune to adult subtext. "We can see everything from here. And the flowers smell really good." Rebecca's smile grew tighter. "Well, I should get back to my other guests. Emily, perhaps we can talk later?" It wasn't really a question. Emily nodded, watching her sister glide away, already wondering what lecture awaited her once Rebecca had her alone. "That was interesting," Daniel murmured as they sat back down. "That was typical," Emily corrected. "Rebecca doesn't like surprises, especially ones that make me look less pathetic than she expected." "You don't look pathetic," Sophie said firmly. "You look like a princess. A sad princess, but Daddy's good at cheering people up. He makes really funny pancakes on Saturdays. They're supposed to be circles, but they look like blobs." "Hey now," Daniel protested, but he was smiling. "Those are artisanal blobs, thank you very much." Emily felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight bands that had held her together for so long. These people, these strangers who'd chosen to sit beside her, were offering something she hadn't realized she'd been starving for. The simple gift of being seen, of mattering, of existing without apology. The orchestra struck up a waltz. Around them, couples began moving toward the dance floor. Emily watched her parents join the flow, her mother's hand resting lightly on her father's shoulder, both of them smiling for the cameras. She'd never seen them dance at home, only at events like this, where appearances mattered. "Do you dance?" Daniel asked. and Emily realized he was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite name. "I used to," she admitted. "Before I decided, I wasn't graceful enough for my mother's standards." "That's ridiculous," he said simply. "Would you like to prove your mother wrong?" Emily's heart hammered. "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "Probably not," Daniel agreed. "But sometimes the best moments come from bad ideas. What do you think, Sophie? Should your old man ask the lady to dance?" "Yes." Sophie bounced in her seat. "And I'll guard the table. I'm very good at guarding things. One time I guarded Daddy's phone for a whole hour at the park." "It was in your pocket, sweetheart," Daniel said fondly. "Exactly. Perfect hiding spot. Nobody found it even once." Emily found herself laughing again, the sound surprising her with its lightness. When Daniel stood and offered his hand, she took it without letting herself think too hard about what it meant. The dance floor was crowded with couples swaying to the music. Emily felt Daniel's hand settle at her waist, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. His other hand held hers gently, and they began to move together with an ease that shouldn't have been possible for two people who'd met less than an hour ago. "You're a good dancer," she said, looking up at him. "Architecture requires understanding rhythm and flow," he replied. "Plus, my mother insisted I take ballroom lessons when I was 16. I complained the entire time, but it turns out she was right. Mothers often are. Not mine," Emily said before she could stop herself. Daniel's eyes held hers. "I'm sorry for that. Everyone deserves a mother who sees them clearly." "Your late wife," Emily ventured carefully. "Was she Sophie's mother?" "Yes, Sarah." His voice carried love and loss in equal measure. "She died in a car accident when Sophie was 3. Some days it feels like it happened yesterday. Other days, it's like another lifetime entirely." "Sophie seems happy," Emily observed. "You must be doing something right." "I'm fumbling through it, mostly. But she's resilient. Kids are better at adapting than we give them credit for." He paused, then added, "Being a single parent wasn't what I planned. But plans change. We adjust. We find new definitions of family." Emily thought about her own family, the one she'd been born into but never quite belonged to. "I'm starting to think blood doesn't automatically make people family." "No," Daniel agreed. "Love does. Showing up does. Choosing someone. Every day. Even when it's hard. That's what makes family." They turned slowly on the floor, and Emily became aware of eyes watching them. Her mother, standing near the bar, looked stunned. Rebecca's college friends whispered behind their hands. Even Marcus had noticed, pausing mid-conversation to stare. "Let them look," Emily thought with a defiance that felt new and powerful. "Let them see that someone chose to be here with me. Let them wonder." The song ended too soon. As they walked back to the table, Sophie greeted them with a gap-toothed smile. "You looked beautiful together," she declared. "Like in the movies when the prince and princess dance, and everyone knows they're going to fall in love." "Sophie," Daniel said, a warning note in his voice. "What?" "I'm just saying what I saw." The little girl turned to Emily. "Do you have a boyfriend?" "No," Emily admitted. "Good, because you should be with Daddy. He's been lonely for a long time, even though he pretends he's not. And you've been lonely too." "I can tell." "That's enough, sweetheart," Daniel said gently. But his ears had gone slightly red. Emily found she didn't mind Sophie's bluntness. There was something refreshing about it. About having someone speak truths that adults danced around. "You're very perceptive," she told the girl. "Mrs. Chen says I notice things other people miss," Sophie said proudly. "She's my teacher. I'm in 1st grade, but I read at a 3rd grade level. Daddy says I get it from my mom." The rest of the reception passed in a blur of moments that felt stolen from someone else's life. Emily sat with Daniel and Sophie. And for the first time at a family event, she didn't feel like an outsider looking in. They talked about everything and nothing, his work designing sustainable buildings, her struggles with budget cuts in arts education, Sophie's intense opinions about which dinosaurs would win in various hypothetical battles. When dinner was served, Sophie insisted on sharing her vegetables with Emily because friends share. When the cake was cut, Daniel made sure Emily got a piece with extra frosting because you look like someone who appreciates the finer things. And when Emily's mother finally approached the table, lips pursed in disapproval, Daniel stood and introduced himself with such genuine warmth that even Catherine Bennett couldn't maintain her ice queen demeanor for long. "I didn't realize Emily was seeing anyone," Catherine said, the words more accusation than observation. "We're getting to know each other," Daniel replied smoothly. "Your daughter is remarkable. You must be very proud." Catherine's expression flickered with something Emily couldn't read. "Of course. Both my daughters are accomplished in their own ways." The careful phrasing wasn't lost on Emily. Rebecca was accomplished. Emily was accomplished in her own way, which meant lesser, different, not quite measuring up. "Emily tells me she teaches art," Daniel continued, apparently oblivious to, or choosing to ignore the subtle dig. "That takes a special kind of talent and patience. Not everyone can inspire creativity in children." "It's a nice hobby," Catherine said. Though, of course, Rebecca's career in corporate law is more financially stable. "Money isn't everything," Sophie said suddenly, looking up at Emily's mother with the fearless honesty of childhood. "Daddy says people who love their work are the richest people in the world, even if they don't have a lot of dollars." Catherine blinked, clearly unprepared to be lectured by a 6-year-old. "That's a very idealistic viewpoint. It's called wisdom," Sophie corrected. "Mrs. Chen taught us that word. It means knowing what's really important." Emily bit her lip to keep from laughing at the expression on her mother's face. Daniel cleared his throat, fighting his own smile. "Well," Catherine said stiffly, "I should return to the other guests. Emily, we'll speak later." It was the second time that evening someone had promised Emily a future conversation that sounded more like a threat. She watched her mother retreat, then turned to find Daniel looking at her with something like admiration. "Your mother is formidable," he said. "That's one word for it," Emily muttered. "I liked my word better," Sophie announced. "Silly." She was being silly about money and jobs. "My daddy builds beautiful buildings, and we have enough money for ice cream every Friday. That's all the money anyone really needs." "Can't argue with that logic," Emily said, reaching over to ruffle Sophie's curls. As the evening wore on, Emily found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't thought possible. The anxiety that had gripped her earlier loosened its hold. The shame of sitting alone, of being publicly diminished by her own family, faded into something that felt almost like a distant memory. When the band played a faster song, Sophie dragged both adults onto the dance floor. They made a silly trio, Sophie spinning between them while Daniel and Emily laughed at her dramatic twirls and exaggerated dips. Other guests moved aside, smiling at the little girl's enthusiasm. For those few minutes, Emily forgot about Rebecca's judgmental looks and her mother's disappointment and all the ways she'd been made to feel inadequate. She was simply a woman dancing with a kind man and his delightful daughter, caught up in a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. Later, when Sophie grew tired and climbed into her father's lap, head resting against his chest, Emily felt a pang of something bittersweet. They would leave soon. This fairy tale evening would end. She would return to her regular life, her small apartment, her solitary existence where no one chose to sit beside her at family events. "Thank you," she said quietly, looking at Daniel over Sophie's sleeping form. "For tonight." "For pretending." "Who says I was pretending?" Daniel asked, his gray eyes serious. "Maybe I just recognized someone who needed the same thing. I did a reminder that kindness still exists in the world." Emily's breath caught. "I should probably get your number. You know, to thank you properly. Or to coordinate if our paths cross at school." "Is that what you want?" Daniel asked. "To coordinate? I want to see you again," Emily admitted, the words emerging before courage could fail her. "If that's something you might want too." Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. I've been trying to figure out how to ask for your number without seeming like I was taking advantage of your vulnerability. This saves me from an awkward moment. Emily took the card, running her thumb over the embossed letters. Daniel Foster, lead architect, Foster and Associates, a phone number, an email address, a physical address downtown. I'll call you, she promised. I'll answer, he said simply. The party was winding down. Guests began filtering out, calling for cars and collecting discarded shoes from under tables. Rebecca was saying goodbye to her new in-laws, still radiant despite the late hour. Marcus stood beside her, the perfect groom with his perfect bride, both of them glowing with the certainty of people whose lives had gone exactly according to plan. Emily gathered her small clutch purse, preparing to leave. Daniel lifted Sophie gently, the girl stirring just enough to wrap her arms around his neck. Are we leaving? Sophie mumbled, not quite awake. Yes, sweetheart. Time to go home. Did we help the sad princess? Daniel looked at Emily, a question in his eyes. Yes, Emily said softly, reaching out to squeeze Sophie's small hand. You helped very much. Good. Sophie sighed, already drifting back to sleep. She's not sad anymore. I can tell. As they walked toward the exit, Emily's father intercepted them. Robert Bennett was a tall man with graying hair and the kind of reserved demeanor that came from a lifetime in banking. He looked at Daniel with the assessing gaze of someone used to evaluating assets. I don't believe we've met, he said, extending a hand. Robert Bennett. Emily's father, Daniel Foster. It's a pleasure, sir. Foster, Robert repeated, his eyebrows rising slightly. Not the same Foster who designed the Riverside Cultural Center? That was my firm. Yes. Impressive work. I sit on the board of the Arts Council. We were all very pleased with the outcome. Robert's gaze shifted to Emily, and for a moment, she saw something like surprise in his eyes. I didn't know you were seeing someone, Emily, especially someone so accomplished in the arts community. The irony wasn't lost on Emily. Her father had barely acknowledged her work as an art teacher, but suddenly she was worth noticing because she stood beside a successful architect who happened to work in cultural spaces. We're still getting to know each other, Emily said, using the same line Daniel had given her mother. Well, don't be a stranger. Your mother and I would like to hear more about this. Robert nodded at Daniel. Good to meet you. I look forward to speaking again. As her father walked away, Emily felt the familiar bitterness rise. I'm sorry about that. My family has a talent for making everything about status and connections. Don't apologize for them, Daniel said. You're not responsible for their values. They stepped out into the cool night air. The hotel's valet area was busy with departing guests. Somewhere inside, Rebecca was probably preparing to leave for her honeymoon. The perfect day was ending perfectly for the perfect daughter. But standing here with Daniel and Sophie, breathing in the night air and feeling genuinely seen for the first time in years, Emily realized that perfection was overrated. This messy, unexpected, completely unplanned connection felt more real than anything she'd experienced in her carefully managed family. I really will call you, she said again, needing Daniel to know she meant it. I know, he replied. I'm a pretty good judge of character. You're not the type to make promises you don't keep. His car arrived, the blue Honda that Sophie had declared their pirate ship. Daniel secured his daughter in her car seat, while Emily stood on the curb, suddenly reluctant to say goodbye. Drive safely, she said when he returned to the driver's side. Always do. I have precious cargo. He paused, then added, Tonight was supposed to be an obligation. A wedding for someone I barely know. Making an appearance out of respect for Sarah's memory. I didn't expect to meet someone who'd remind me that sometimes the best things in life are completely unplanned. Emily felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears. The kind that came from being moved rather than hurt. You saved me tonight. Both of you. I want you to know that. Maybe we saved each other, Daniel suggested. He climbed into the car, then rolled down the window. Emily? That dress, by the way. It's not just pretty. It's stunning. I thought you should know someone noticed." Then he was pulling away, taillights disappearing into the night, and Emily was left standing alone again. But this time, the solitude didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like the space between chapters, the pause before something new began. She pulled out her phone and stared at Daniel's business card, memorizing the number. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would call. Tomorrow she would take the first step towards something that felt suspiciously like hope. But tonight, she had to get through one last ordeal. She turned back toward the hotel, steeling herself for whatever confrontation awaited with Rebecca, or her mother, or both. The wedding might be over, but the real battle was just beginning. Sure enough, she found Rebecca waiting in the nearly empty lobby. Her wedding dress pooling around her feet like a white sea. Marcus had discreetly vanished, probably giving the sisters privacy for whatever scene Rebecca had planned. "Who was that?" Rebecca demanded without preamble. "His name is Daniel. He's an architect. We met tonight." "You met tonight?" Rebecca's voice rose an octave. "You let me believe you were seeing someone when you literally just met him at my wedding?" "You assumed I was seeing someone," Emily corrected. "I never said that." "And what does it matter? You seated me alone in the back like I was something to be ashamed of. At least Daniel and Sophie treated me like I mattered." "Sophie? There was a child too?" "His daughter. She's 6 and she's wonderful, and she saw that I was alone and told her father they should help me." A 6-year-old showed more compassion than my entire family. Rebecca flinched, and for a moment her perfect facade cracked. You have to understand. Mother was very specific about the seating. She said you'd be more comfortable on your own since you didn't have a date. I didn't want to make waves on my wedding day. When have you ever stood up for me against Mother?" Emily asked. And she was surprised to find no anger in the question, only weariness. "When have you ever chosen me over keeping the peace? That's not fair, isn't it? You got everything, Becca. The praise, the attention, the approval. I got the leftovers. And tonight was supposed to be your big day, so fine. I came, I sat where I was told. I was quiet and invisible, just like everyone wanted. But then someone saw me anyway, and now you're upset because I wasn't miserable enough?" "I'm not," Rebecca stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "I didn't want you to be miserable. I just didn't think about where you'd be sitting, or how it would feel. I was so focused on everything else." "I know," Emily said quietly. "You're always focused on everything else. I'm the detail that gets overlooked. Is that really how you see it?" "It's how it is." They stood in silence, the lobby's chandelier casting shadows between them. Emily thought about walking away, about ending this conversation before it could become another wound. But something Daniel had said earlier echoed in her mind. Choosing someone. Every day. Even when it's hard. "I love you," Emily said, and Rebecca's head snapped up in surprise. "You're my sister, and I love you. I probably always will, but I can't keep shrinking myself to fit into the corners of your life. And I can't keep waiting for you to notice I'm disappearing." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that tonight, 2 strangers showed me what it feels like to be chosen. And now that I know that feeling exists, I can't unknow it. I deserve more than what this family has been giving me." Rebecca's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. He seemed nice, Daniel, and the little girl was sweet. "They are," Emily agreed. "Are you really going to see him again?" "I hope so. If he meant what he said, and if he didn't," Emily considered the question. A few hours ago, she might have answered differently. But something had shifted in her tonight. Something fundamental. Then I'll be disappointed. But I won't stop believing I deserve kindness. That's the gift they gave me, Becca. Not false hope. Just a reminder that I'm worthy of being treated well. Rebecca wiped at her eyes, careful not to smudge her makeup. "I have to go. Marcus and I have an early flight. Have a wonderful honeymoon." "Em?" Rebecca hesitated, then reached out to squeeze her sister's hand. "I'm sorry. For tonight. For a lot of things. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. It wasn't enough. It might never be enough. But it was a start. Emily drove home through empty streets, the city quiet in the early morning hours. Her small apartment welcomed her with familiar silence. She changed out of the dress, hung it carefully in the closet, and climbed into bed. Sleep should have come easily after such an exhausting night. Instead, she lay awake, replaying moments. Daniel's hand at her waist as they danced. Sophie's small fingers squeezing hers. The way her mother's expression had shifted from dismissal to calculation when she realized Daniel was someone of importance, her father's sudden interest in her life, and Rebecca's apology, inadequate but genuine. Emily pulled out her phone and looked at Daniel's business card one more time. Tomorrow felt too far away. Before she could second-guess herself, she typed out a text. "This is Emily from the wedding. I know it's late, but I wanted to say thank you again. Meeting you and Sophie was the best part of my evening. Actually, it was the best part of my month, maybe my year. I hope you got home safely." She hit send before courage could fail, then immediately regretted it. Too much. Too eager. He would think she was desperate, clingy, pathetic. Her phone buzzed 30 seconds later. "This is Daniel. Sophie is asleep and I'm still wired from the wedding. I'm glad you texted. Meeting you was the highlight of our evening too. Maybe even our year. Sophie already asked if we could see you again. I told her I hoped so." Emily smiled in the darkness of her bedroom. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. What did she say to that? She said hope is good, but planning is better. Then she suggested we invite you to our Saturday pancake tradition. Apparently, artisanal blobs taste better when shared with friends. I would love to see these legendary blobs. How does 10 o'clock work? I'll text you the address tomorrow. Fair warning. Sophie will want to show you every single drawing she's made in the last 6 months. I'm an art teacher. Looking at drawings is literally my job. I can handle it. Then it's a date, or a pancake appointment, or whatever we're calling things that happen between people who met under unusual circumstances. Emily's smile widened. I think we can just call it breakfast. Everything else can figure itself out. Wise words. Get some sleep, Emily. I'll talk to you tomorrow. She set her phone on the nightstand and closed her eyes. For the first time in longer than she could remember, tomorrow felt like something to look forward to instead of something to endure. The days that followed had a dreamlike quality. Emily showed up at Daniel's house that Saturday. A modest but charming craftsman in a neighborhood full of old trees and playing children. Sophie answered the door in princess pajamas, already talking before Emily had fully crossed the threshold. The pancakes were indeed blob-shaped, but they were delicious. Sophie's drawings covered every surface of the kitchen. A riot of color and imagination. Daniel moved through the chaos with easy confidence, flipping pancakes while simultaneously answering Sophie's rapid-fire questions about everything from dinosaur extinction to why the sky was blue. Emily felt herself relaxing into their rhythm. There was no performance here. No need to be anyone other than exactly who she was. When she laughed at Sophie's dramatic retelling of a playground incident, it was genuine. When she helped Daniel clean up, working beside him at the sink while Sophie watched cartoons, it felt natural. "This is nice," she said quietly, drying a plate. "It is," Daniel agreed. "I was worried it might be awkward. First, real meeting, outside of wedding circumstances. I think the pancakes broke the ice. The pancakes fix everything. It's science." Over the next few weeks, Emily found herself drawn deeper into their orbit. Coffee dates while Sophie was at school. Afternoon visits to the park, where Sophie would perform elaborate plays with wood chips as her stage. Dinner at Emily's apartment, where she made pasta and Sophie declared her the best cook ever, which Daniel gently corrected to one of the best cooks. "Sweetheart, don't forget Grandma Rose." It was during one of these dinners that Daniel told her the full story of Sarah's death. They'd been married for 5 years, happy and planning for more children. The accident had been sudden, a truck running a red light. Sarah, in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sophie had been at her grandmother's house. Daniel had been at work, designing a library that would never feel the same after that day. I was angry for a long time, he admitted. Sophie safely asleep in Emily's guest room after an evening of board games. Angry at the truck driver, at fate, at God if there is one, but mostly angry that Sophie would grow up without her mother. You've done an amazing job with her, Emily said. I've tried. But there are things I can't give her. A mother's perspective. The kind of bond Sarah would have had with her. I worry about the gaps I'm leaving. Emily reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. You can't fill every gap. No parent can. But you show up. You love her fiercely. You make terrible pancakes and let her wear princess pajamas past noon, and you're teaching her that kindness matters. That's not nothing, Daniel. He turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together. You're good for us, both of us. I hope you know that. I'm starting to, Emily said, but the bubble couldn't last forever. Reality intruded in the form of a Sunday dinner invitation from her mother. Catherine Bennett's voice on the phone was artificially sweet, the tone she used when maneuvering someone into position. I'd like to meet this Daniel properly, she said. Rebecca mentioned he made quite an impression. Why don't you both come for dinner next Sunday? Your father and I are eager to get to know him better. Emily recognized the trap. This wasn't about getting to know Daniel. This was about assessing his worth, his usefulness to the family's social standing. But refusing would create its own set of problems. I'll ask him, she said carefully. Wonderful. And Emily? Do wear something nice. First impressions matter. When Emily extended the invitation to Daniel, she made sure to prepare him. My family is complicated. They're going to judge you. They're going to ask inappropriate questions. My mother will probably grill you about your career and your finances. It's not going to be comfortable. I can handle uncomfortable, Daniel said. The question is, do you want me to meet them? Really? Emily thought about it. The easy answer was no. Keep Daniel and Sophie separate from the dysfunction that was the Bennett family. Preserve this good thing from contamination. But that felt like hiding, and she was done hiding. Yes, she said. I want you to meet them. I want them to see that I've found people who choose me. I want them to understand that I don't need their approval anymore. The dinner was exactly as terrible as Emily anticipated. Her mother spent the first 30 minutes asking Daniel about his education, his family background, his firm's client list. Her father dominated the conversation with talk of real estate development and zoning laws. Rebecca and Marcus were there too. Rebecca shooting Emily apologetic looks, while Marcus nodded along with whatever Robert Bennett said. Daniel handled it with remarkable grace, answering questions without being obsequious, steering the conversation away from uncomfortable topics without seeming evasive. When Catherine made a pointed comment about Emily's quaint little teaching job, Daniel smoothly countered with statistics about the importance of arts education in childhood development. When Robert suggested that architecture was a real career unlike some fields, Daniel politely disagreed, noting that teachers shape the minds that would become future architects, doctors, and leaders. Emily watched him navigate her family's landmines and felt something bloom in her chest. Not just gratitude. Something deeper. Something that felt suspiciously like love. But then, as dessert was being served, her mother went for the kill. So, Daniel, a widower with a young child. That must be quite a responsibility. It is, Daniel agreed evenly. And now you're considering adding a relationship into that mix. Are you sure that's wise? For Sophie's sake, I mean. Children form attachments so quickly. It would be devastating for her if things didn't work out. The table went silent. Emily felt her face burn with humiliation and rage. Mother, she started. I'm just being practical, dear. Daniel seems like a lovely man, but we need to think about what's best for everyone involved. A single father with a child has certain complications. Surely you understand that, Emily. The subtext was clear. You're not good enough for someone with real responsibilities. You'll disappoint him the way you've disappointed us." Emily stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I think we should go." "Emily, don't be dramatic," Catherine said. You're simply being cruel." Emily interrupted, her voice shaking but firm. "You've spent my entire life telling me I'm not enough, not smart enough, not successful enough, not important enough, and I believed you. For years, I believed you. But Daniel and Sophie taught me something you never did. They taught me that I deserve to be chosen, that I'm worthy of kindness, that my love and my presence have value." She turned to Daniel, who had stood as well. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought you here. I thought I was ready to face them. But I was wrong. We should leave." "Actually," Daniel said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel, "I'd like to say something, if you don't mind." Catherine looked startled. Robert frowned. Rebecca's eyes widened. "Mrs. Bennet," Daniel continued, "you're right that I have responsibilities. My daughter is the most important thing in my world. Every decision I make with her well-being in mind. And one of the best decisions I've made recently was approaching your daughter at that wedding." He moved to stand beside Emily, his hand finding hers. "Emily is patient and creative and kind. She listens when Sophie talks about things that don't interest most adults. She shows up when she says she will. She's taught me that grief doesn't have to be the end of hope. That opening your heart again isn't weakness, it's courage. Those aren't complications, those are gifts." Catherine opened her mouth, but Daniel wasn't finished. "You've built a life that values achievement and status. That's your choice. But you've failed to see that your daughter's greatest achievement is being a decent human being in a world that often isn't. She's successful at the things that actually matter: compassion, integrity, love. And if you can't recognize that, then frankly, you're the one missing out." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily felt tears streaming down her face. But she didn't care. Daniel's words had cracked something open inside her. Some last vestige of the child who desperately wanted her parents' approval. She didn't need it anymore. She didn't want it. "We're leaving," she said again, and this time there was no tremor in her voice. "Thank you for dinner." They walked out together, hand in hand. Behind them, Emily heard Rebecca call her name, but she didn't turn back. Not this time. In the car, they sat in silence for a moment. Then Emily started to laugh. A slightly hysterical sound that shifted into genuine mirth. "That was insane," she said. "That was overdue," Daniel countered. "You've been carrying their judgment for too long. Did I mention I'm falling in love with you?" The words slipped out before Emily could stop them. Daniel turned to look at her, his gray eyes serious. "Are you?" "Yes. Is that okay? I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But tonight, watching you defend me to my family, I realized I've been falling since the moment you asked to sit beside me at that wedding." "It's more than okay," Daniel said quietly. "Because I've been falling too. And Sophie." He smiled. "Sophie declared 3 days ago that you should move in with us and be her extra mom. I told her we needed to take things slower, but the sentiment stands." Emily laughed again, this time with pure joy. "Your daughter is very efficient at family planning. She gets it from her mother. Sarah was a planner too." He said it easily, without pain. And Emily understood that this was what healing looked like, being able to remember love without drowning in loss. "I'd like to meet her," Emily said. "I mean, I know I can't. But I'd like to know more about her. To understand the woman who helped make Sophie who she is." "I'd like that," Daniel said. "I think you would have been friends." They drove to his house, where Daniel's mother, Grandma Rose, was watching Sophie. The little girl was still awake, building an elaborate castle out of blocks. "Emily!" she squealed, running to wrap her arms around Emily's legs. "Did you have dinner with your family? Was it nice?" "It was interesting," Emily hedged. Daddy says interesting is what adults say when they mean not good but they don't want to complain. Your daddy is very wise. I know, Sophie said seriously. He's the wisest. Except about vegetables. He thinks cauliflower is good, but it's actually gross. Grandma Rose laughed from the couch. You must be Emily. I've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope. Sophie thinks you're magic. Daniel is slightly more reserved but equally complimentary. Rose stood, gathering her purse. I should head home. But Emily, before I go, thank you. I haven't seen my son this happy in 3 years. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. After Rose left, the three of them settled on the couch. Sophie insisted on sitting between them. Her small body a bridge, connecting their hands. Will you read me a story? Sophie asked Emily. Of course. Which book? Sophie hopped up and returned with a worn copy of a fairy tale collection. The one about the princess who rescues herself. Emily opened to the marked page and began reading. Sophie's breathing slowly evened out as the story progressed. By the time Emily finished, the little girl was asleep, her head on Emily's shoulder. She's never fallen asleep that fast with me, Daniel whispered. I have a very soothing reading voice. It's a teacher thing. They carried Sophie to her bed together, working in quiet tandem to remove her shoes and pull a blanket over her. In the doorway, Daniel paused to watch his daughter sleep. And Emily saw the fierce love in his expression. This was what a real family looked like, she thought. Not perfect, not conventional, but built on choice and care and showing up, day after day, even when it was hard. Back in the living room, Daniel pulled Emily into his arms. Move in with us, he said. That's very fast, I know. But Sophie's right about most things. And I'm tired of saying goodnight to you and watching you leave. I want you here. I want to make you breakfast and argue about what to watch on TV and build a life together. All the mundane, beautiful, ordinary things. Emily thought about her small apartment, her solitary existence. She thought about her family and their conditional love. And then she thought about this Daniel's arms around her. Sophie sleeping peacefully down the hall. A future full of pancakes and school plays and belonging. Okay, she whispered. Yes. Let's build something together. They kissed, gentle and full of promise. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, a new family was taking shape, pieced together from broken parts and unexpected kindness. It wasn't the life Emily had imagined. It was better, because she hadn't been rescued at that wedding. She'd been reminded of her own worth. And in remembering, she'd found the courage to choose herself. To choose love. To choose the messy, imperfect, absolutely perfect family that chose her right back. The wedding had been Rebecca's day, but the real celebration was just beginning, built not on appearances and approval, but on something far more valuable, the simple, revolutionary act of being seen and choosing to stay.